This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. Journey with us to a land and story that are beyond expectations. It's the Phantom Tollbooth, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit. It's been a short hiatus. We had a little end of the year, beginning of the year, I guess.
Like both.
Break.
Yeah.
Holiday break. But we are back with our regularly scheduled programming. We're talking about the Phantom Tollbooth. Before we get started, we wanted to mention that this episode is in fact a patron request. If you head over to our Patreon, at patreon.com/thisfilmislit. You can support us for $2, $5, or $15 a month. But if you support us for $15 a month, you get priority recommendation status, which means you can recommend something and we'll throw it into the lineup as soon as we can. And so this one was requested by a Academy Award-winning patron, Kelly Napier. Requested this one. So if you want to join that group, like I said, just head over to Patreon/thisfilmislit. And support us for $15 a month, and we'll do the thing you want us to do much sooner. I mean, we'll still maybe get to some of the other ones, but it'll take longer because the list is very long.
Yeah.
We have every segment.
Almost. We don't technically have a Guess Who.
I see Guess Who here.
I just have some notes under
Okay,
there.
well, we're still going to say we have every segment because I see it. There's a segment called Guess Who in the notes that has things written underneath it. So let's get into our first segment. Let me sum up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
Milo is a little boy who's bored with life in general until one day a mysterious toll booth appears in his bedroom and allows him to journey to a magical fantasy realm where two rulers have spent years arguing over whether words or numbers are more important. Milo and his new friends, Tok the Watchdog and the Humbug, set out to rescue the princess's rhyme and reason, thereby restoring order to all the land.
That's what the movie is, too.
Yeah, basically.
So, there we go. Nice and succinct. That's roughly the plot of The Phantom Tollbooth. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, let's dive right in to not Guess Who, but kind of Guess Who, I guess.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay.
So I don't have any actual character descriptions written down.
Okay.
There are a lot of character descriptions in this book, but the characters are so cartoonish that I thought it would be immediately obvious who I was describing and thus not very much fun.
Okay. I mean, because there's like a dog and a bug thing and a boy. Yeah, so that's fair. Fair enough.
I do want to note, though, that I'm going to be posting some side-by-side pictures comparing illustrations from the book.
Oh, because there are illustrations.
There are illustrations in the book, so I'm going to compare some of those to movie screen caps, depending on what I can find. So I'm going to be posting that in our social media feeds probably a day or two after this episode comes out. So be on the lookout for that.
Okay. Cool. All right, we're going to get into our main segments, and that means first thing first, we're going to find out, was that in the book?
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
What?
Honestly, don't you two read?
So I had some questions. I didn't have a lot of, this is always, with popular movies that I know a lot of people have seen and that I know well, and that I know what are iconic things from them. It's sort of easy for me to, I tend to try to pick out things that are okay, the iconic moments. Mm-hmm. Is that something that happened in the book? Or I try to watch and see for certain details that feel specifically like a sort of movie edition, which is usually easier with like more modern sort of big, like the modern filmmaking style and like the way Hollywood works now. It's a little bit easier to pick those details out. With this one, I had a very tough time in terms of like, you know, looking at it as like nothing in particular screamed like this is a movie edition. You know what I mean? And but I also don't know like what are considered iconic moments or things from the film to people who have seen it, because it is not particularly popular. So this will be interesting, but I do have some questions nonetheless. First up, I thought this was interesting in the film. The movie starts with, we open up with Milo, and he's having a boring day at school, and they're just teaching him stuff that he doesn't care about, and then he gets home and he calls his friend, but we hear like his thoughts, I believe, right? Am I misremembering that? We hear his thoughts, or is it him talking to his friend? I thought it was we hear his thoughts at one point too, but maybe it's just him talking to his friend.
I think it's him talking to his friend mostly. But we do get like the nice jazzy number that tells us all about it. Yeah, but no, but he literally has like, we hear him having like a sort of existential like midlife crisis about how like he doesn't care about anything and everything's terrible and boring and like it's empty and meaningless. And I was like, what? This kid's like 7. Right? Or like, this is a little kid. That's wild. Like, it's wild to me. And I'm sure people do go through that at that age. But that was to me, that's like a teenager thing and not like a 7-year-old thing. But so I wanted to know if that motivation, like sort of that sets up his character and what leads him to ultimately go through this toll booth, because he's just like, well, I got nothing else to do. The world's boring and sucks. Is that the same motivation, same kind of setup in the book? Yeah, it's pretty much the same. In the book, he's bored with everything. He doesn't really see the point in doing most stuff. And the main thing, I think, is like school, and like he doesn't understand why he's being asked to learn the things that he's asked to learn, because like, who cares, you know? Right, and that comes across in the movie. I mean, that's definitely there, because he does talk about, you know, like the opening is him in class with the droning of the teacher and like all these different things, and you can tell he just doesn't care about any of it. But it also does, apart from that, you get the vibe that he's like a nihilist as like an 8-year-old. I mean, yeah, that is kind of the vibe. He just like doesn't care. I do think the movie maybe comes off as a little more like melodramatic. Yeah, they add the phone call with his friend, right, which was really something wild. We laughed at that a lot because his friend, you can tell, like, does not care. His friend sounds so bored on the phone. Like, not bored like Milo is bored. No. But bored like, please shut up. God. Like, Milo, you call me every day. You and call me and you complain about how life is pointless. Yeah. There was one line in particular that made us both laugh, and I can't remember exactly. I didn't write it down, but there was one, like, the kid on the other end of the line says something in response to something Milo says, and it sounds like it was the most like resigned, like, oh, fine, like, okay, Milo, go ahead. All right, yeah, go ahead. Tell me about how nothing matters. We do this every day when you get home from school. It was very funny. But I guess that leads into my next question here, which is, once he does eventually go through the toll booth, and I didn't ask about the toll booth because I assume that's what it's called, and it's the whole thing. Well, the title would be quite a red herring if it wasn't actually a toll booth. Yeah. But once he gets inside, there is the first like sort of thing he encounters after the dog, or no, this is before the dog. Yeah. Before the dog, is he drives into this this like foresty, swampy looking place, and he runs into the Lethargians, and the place is called the Doldrums, I think. And this is again sort of referencing his sort of unmotivated, like, nihilistic personality that he's dealing with in this moment. But they sing a song and they like cover the car in ooze, and it's weird and creepy, kind of. And it was interesting. I assumed honestly most of the stuff I asked, I assumed was probably at least somewhat from the book. Just because, again, I feel like nothing stuck out to me. I don't know if there was anything that stuck out to me like, well, that's clearly a movie ad, but we'll
we'll see. But are the Lethargians something that's out of the book?
Yes, he does. He's driving along without really paying attention, and he ends up driving into the doldrums and meet the Lethargians. They do not sing in the book, though.
Okay. Yeah, because they do like sing him into a stupor in the film. And I was feeling sleepy in that moment too, and it was not good. It was working on me. I was like, oh no, we just ate dinner. I'm kind of, don't fall asleep.
You have to think yourself out of the doldrums.
Yeah. He does get away eventually, and he meets the dog, and I assume Talk is
also pictured on the cover.
Yeah, it's on the cover, so that makes sense. But there was this is a little detail that I wanted to ask about because I thought it was very clever, and I didn't realize that the whole premise was that this land he was going to was all like words and stuff. I had no idea that was like you know what I mean, the setting, and everything's made of words and letters and numbers and stuff, and not everything, but at least in the film, most of like a lot of stuff is, but not everything. It's complicated. I don't know. Like some stuff is, other stuff isn't. It's very strange. But one of the things it is the trees grow letters, like they're fruit. And it was just a little detail that made me chuckle is that when we see him driving past these trees, people are
they're like harvesting letters.
The letters, and the letters that are fully grown are capital letters and they're like red, and then there's other ones that they're checking that are like green and they're lowercase letters, so they're not ripe yet. And it's a little detail that I thought was funny and clever, and I wanted to know if that was from the book.
It wasn't mentioned in the book, like that specific thing. Not that I could find, because I thought, oh, surely that's something that was like maybe offhand mentioned in the book that I just don't remember. But I went back and I looked, and I pulled up my my digital copy, and I did like some word searches, and I couldn't find anything about that. But I do think it's a fun detail, and it is a good like add-on to the world because the letters do grow on trees. Like they're harvested from orchards in the book.
So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Or like it's another detail that this may be expanded upon. Because I thought it was clever. It made me chuckle when I saw it. I was like, that's fun. So the whole premise, the whole setup is in the movie is that there are these two kingdoms, Dictionopolis and Digitopolis. And they used to be, I think they're brothers. The kings are brothers, and they used to be friends. But then they had a big falling out and fight over they couldn't decide whether or not words are more important or numbers are more important, because Digitopolis is all about numbers, and Dictionarium or whatever, Dictionopolis is all about words and letters. And I want to know if that premise was and then ultimately this rift was caused after. I wasn't clear on this, if this rift caused Rhyme and Reason to leave, or they left before that for some reason, and that's why this rift happened. I wasn't quite clear on that. I don't have this in Lost in Adaptation, but it is basically, you can try.
Yeah, that is kind of a Lost in Adaptation. So that is the main, I guess, conflict of the story, is this fight between these two kings and the fact that the princesses Rhyme and Reason are gone. They're no longer residing in the Kingdom of Wisdom. So basically how it's explained to us in the book is that these two kings ruled in different cities, and they often had disagreements, but Rhyme and Reason were there to help them resolve those disagreements. So everything usually worked out, and then one day they got into the really big argument of which was more important, and when Rhyme and Reason ruled that they were of equal importance, that made the kings so mad that they banished Rhyme and Reason.
I do remember that part. I now recollect them ruling that they were, what you said. I do recall that now. Okay, so I figured that was all the same. But I have to say, I do wonder if I would have enjoyed this. I enjoyed the movie mostly. It didn't do a lot for me. Like I didn't find it boring, and I didn't dislike it at any point, but I also wasn't like, wow, this is great.
It was
what I mean? Like, it was just okay.
Yeah, it was fine.
And I think part of that is, I think this is so hard to capture in a way that
Oh, yeah.
Not only to capture like this weird world in a way that works on screen, but also just there's a lot of little details to kind of like the story that I think are hard to parse in like an hour and a half long kids movie. Not that it's a particularly complicated story, and I think you get everything you need to from it out of the film. But it just I was getting the feeling as I was watching this that I was like, I bet I would enjoy this more as a book. You know what I mean?
I think you would.
I had that vibe as we were watching it. I was like, I feel like this is just, I would like this more reading it than I do watching it. And part of that, I think, is just and we'll get into it, but I think part of it is that the storytelling style and filmmaking style we've progressed so much that the sort of the pacing and I don't know, just the way stories were written back then for film doesn't quite work the same way. That's not true of everything, obviously, but especially I think for something like a kids movie, I don't know. I found it just like it never really gripped me in a way that I hoped it would. But again, I never was like, this isn't good. I never thought that. You know, like with Polar Express, I was like, well, this is terrible. I never thought that. I was like, and like every now and then I kind of like smiled, like, it's fun. You know what I mean? I was like, it's fun.
I think part of it, I think you're right that part of it is that the story is hard to translate.
Yeah.
Because there's not that there's like so much going on.
No, there's not a lot going on, but
that there is a lot of it is like kind of wrapped up in minutia is not quite the right word, but just wrapped up in like detail. Well,
and a lot of it's wrapped up in like wordplay.
Yeah, the book does
seemingly
rely so much on. The book is like 75% wordplay and like 25% world building.
Yeah.
And both of those things are kind of difficult to translate succinctly to an hour and a half film.
Yeah.
So it does end up, I think, feeling a little bit flat and like a diet version of what you get with the book.
I think that's what it was. It did just sort of feel kind of flat in general in relation. Like it just felt like there was more there to be had, and then we just didn't get quite enough of anything. I don't know. It was an interesting film, and I enjoyed watching it overall. But it was, I don't know. Anyways, let's move on. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. Chroma the Great is somebody who conducts the sunset, and he kind of looks like, I can't remember which one that is.
He kind of looks like Beethoven.
Is it Beethoven? I think it's Beethoven.
Who has like the
who has the big
puff of
yeah, it's Beethoven, I believe. Right? No, is it Bach? No, I think it's Beethoven.
I think it is Beethoven that you're thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, Bach is the one who looks like any generic like English like not lawyer. What are they called? The people who are barrister. Anyway, he's got like the white, like powdered wig look. Anyways, Bach, I think is who I'm thinking of. So, Chroma the Great, he conducts the sunset. It's a cool little scene, and as another little detail that I thought was funny is that, and it seems so strange that I felt like it had to be from the book. When he goes to bed after he does the sunset, he sleeps in Brahms in the sheet music, in a giant sheet music, or maybe it's not giant because he might be small.
It's hard to say.
But in a sheet music that is the size of a bed for him of Brahms' Lullaby. And it made me chuckle, and I want to know if that was in the book or any of that.
Chroma the Great is a character in the book. We do see him conduct a sunset. He actually, what he does is conduct color.
Oh.
So he conducts like all of the color that appears in the world. That makes sense.
His name is Chroma.
But what we see him do is a sunset.
Okay.
It's not mentioned in the book that he sleeps in Brahms' Lullaby, but there is an illustration of Milo asleep on some large sheet music.
Interesting.
So that might be
which is not something we see in the movie.
No, but I'm sure that's where the movie pulled that from.
Yeah, that makes sense. It like kind of goes together since we see him conducting. And I thought the lullaby was clever too. All right. This thing, good Lord, this came out of nowhere and I was not prepared for it because it's 100% I can't remember their names now from Doctor Who. They're not called the Faceless. What are they? It's been so long since I've watched those seasons of Doctor Who. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They're the Matt Smith seasons, Doctor
the alien
Who
things.
villains that when you look
The
at
Silence?
The Silence.
Yeah.
This guy looks like the Silence.
He does.
And I'm glad you remember that. I can't believe I couldn't remember the Silence. Although I can believe it because that's their whole thing. So you can't remember. But yeah, he looks like this Silence looking dude comes out. He's just like a faceless, terrifying guy in a hat and a suit.
Yeah.
Horrifying. I was like, what is this nightmare? Because nothing up until this point had been particularly creepy.
Yeah.
Like there had been some kind of weird stuff, but nothing like this is like, it's like Slender Man or something. Is that from the book?
Yes, and it similarly came out of nowhere and terrified me. I turned the page and suddenly there was the most horrific illustration.
He's called the Terrible Trivium.
Yes.
And
yeah, he's called the Terrible Trivium, and he's basically like a demon of distraction or procrastination.
Yeah, it specifically seems like in the film he's a demon of like menial tasks.
Yeah, he like
of trivium. I mean,
trivium of doing like wasting time with little trivial tasks.
Busy work.
Personally attacked.
Yeah.
Not me over here wasting time color coding my planner.
You see, it's funny because I could think you can read that two ways. It's funny you say that because I read it more so as like an external force compelling you, like giving you busy work, and that being like, whereas you're saying it more from like an internal thing where you waste your time.
I would more read it like,
which makes sense,
I read it more as like that compulsion to like, oh, I'm gonna organize the junk drawer instead of doing my taxes.
Right. And that makes sense because, and I think that does make more sense with the overall like sort of themes we get throughout the course of the film with the like the Lethargians and some of the others. So like all the different people they run into are more like internal manifestations and that sort of thing. But it's funny, in this one, I didn't read it that way at first because I guess it's because part of it is like the tasks he gives them aren't things that they're more like laborious, busy work than they are like the kind of thing you would distract yourself and waste time with. You know what I mean?
It's the same in the book. He gives them the same tasks,
well, it's like
but
move
it is
this sand.
Yeah, it is like it's very like a mythology. Like move this entire mountain grain by grain kind of a thing.
Yeah, and to me that read more like sort of the monotonous busy work you might get in like a terrible like office job or something, as opposed to like, oh, I don't want to do this thing, so I'm gonna do this other thing, which I think it works that way too, but I didn't read it that way.
I think you could definitely read it either way. I'm sure the Terrible Trivium would be happy to interpret it either way. So.
Yeah. So we get towards the end here, kind of towards the end, and they're still trying. So we didn't mention this, but they're trying to get to the castle in the sky, castle in the air,
yeah.
Which is where Rhyme and Reason are, because if Milo has convinced both the kings that he can get Rhyme and Reason to come back, and that'll solve the problems or something.
Yeah, that'll solve the problems that plague the realm.
Yeah. And so he's trying to get to the castle in the air, but as they're driving up, this magical road up through the sky, they run into all these strange creatures that I'm not sure exactly what they all are. There's a bunch of different ones.
Yeah, so they have to get to the castle in the air, they have to travel through the land of ignorance.
Is that what it was called?
Yeah, so all of these demons inhabit the land of ignorance, and they're all like they represent, like bad things, like the Terrible Trivium, or like they mention like hate.
They do. Yeah, and
like hate and malice, and the know-it-all character.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so like the Trivium they get away from on its own, but then a bunch of these other ones all show up at once, and they're all just kind of like bad, like you said, almost like the 7 deadly sins, but different.
Yeah,
like they're just like malice and bigotry and stuff. I don't even remember what they all are. And he deals with these in the film by doing some like quick math in his head, and then realizing that he can use words to vanquish these these creatures. And the movie has this whole theme throughout the whole thing of Milo realizing that the stuff he's learning in school actually is useful. Like that's one of the messages is like, oh, he finds different times throughout the course of the movie to use things he's learned. But in this moment, he does some math and is like, oh, if I do that and then I remove 2F and now I can shoot the word for or something. I don't remember. No, wholesome.
It was forthright. I think.
Forthright.
Yeah.
He shoots the word and what he's doing is he's basically shooting like the opposite, like the good word version of whatever the bad thing the person is or the monster is.
Right.
So it's like instead of bigotry, it's like love or what.
Yeah.
That's not what one of them, but it's stuff like that. But he's shooting them these words with a number 4 like bow and arrow catapult at the. Is that how that plays out in the book? It was very interesting, and it felt that one is one of those moments that felt a bit like maybe they're taking some liberties to give us kind of an action-y type of scene here, maybe.
So what is from the book is them getting chased by a horde of these demons as they're like on the last stretch getting to the castle. Shooting the words at them is not in the book. And I'll go ahead and talk about this here because I wasn't really sure where to put it. I like the idea of it.
Right.
I like the idea of like, oh, I can cancel out the demon of hate by shooting it with love.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine.
It's fine. It's an interesting idea, especially for like a piece of children's media. You know, it's gets the point across.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it pans out here because the premise that they set up is that he's like, if I combine letters and numbers, then I can defeat them. Yeah. Which, and at first I was like, great, fantastic. That's kind of like what we've been talking about this whole time. That like, you know, they're both important, so we should use both of them. But then like what he ends up doing is like math that's not real math, then he just shoots words. And then he just shoots
words. I didn't understand. Yeah, he absolutely just goes, he writes a made-up formula.
Yeah.
And it's like, and if we remove this from it, like he does some canceling out of some sort, and that leaves something that then gets him to the answer forthright to shoot.
But then moving on from there, he does no more math.
He does no more math. He just shoots words. He does use the number 4 to shoot words at him because it kind of looks like a bow, like a catapult thing, kind of like a ballista a little bit. He's able to like pull it back, but it's not the number, like it being a number. You could do it with a different letter, like a letter shape. You could use like a C, that's a bow, like that's like shaped like a bow. I don't know, or a D is like exactly shaped like a bow.
I mean, I like the idea.
Yeah,
I like what you're putting down. I'm just not sure it works.
No, I was like,
I don't think it did what they wanted it to do.
No, it would take some more thinking through to make that premise sort of follow through, where he does use both numbers and words somehow.
Yeah.
And I think it would just have to be a lot more clever than it is. They just kind of like, well, it's kids. They won't. He does some math. We don't have to figure out what that math is. And the math might even make sense to, I didn't pay attention that close to like what he's doing. I would maybe need to watch that scene again to see if it is maybe more clever than I'm giving it credit for, but I don't think it is, in terms of like what kind of math he's doing and how that leads to his answer.
If the math is a little fudged, I don't even think that makes a difference.
Yeah.
But just the fact that they were like, use math and words.
Yeah.
But then no, just words.
Just words is what defeats, it was interesting. But so how do they get it? They just get away from the demons in the book?
They get to the castle before the demons manage to catch them, and then
so they're just like driving in the car and they just outrun them or something.
I think they're on foot at that point, but
all right.
But they do get up to the castle.
So ultimately they get up there and he's able to get to rhyme and reason, and they fly around the kingdom fixing everything. I don't remember. He doesn't even. I don't know how. Remember how he convinces them to, or how he sets them free. Is maybe that's a question I have that's a lost in adaptation of like what is supposed to have happened there, where they like were they being held prisoner
in
or were
the
they
book they physically help them escape.
Yeah. In the movie,
it seems like they were already able to leave on their own, and they just weren't. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly what was supposed to be going on there. But as they're flying around, and one character we haven't talked about so far is Officer Shortshrift. Mm-hmm. And I guess I should have asked, is Officer Shortshrift in the book?
Yes.
Okay. Because this whole thing in the movie is when Milo first shows up, Officer Shortshrift, who's like this little robot policeman guy. Or like he has like robot wheels like for legs. He doesn't really have legs. He's like constantly giving Milo tickets and sentencing him to increasingly longer jail sentences for like nothing. He like hasn't done anything. And he like always like guilty, 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 and like he just yells guilty at him all the time. And then after Rhyme and Reason come back, they swoop in and they're like, "A cab!" And then they do police reform. And I wanted to know if that's what happened in the movie or in the book, because that shit was wild.
There's no mention of reforming any policing tactics. No.
Because it's funny because he yells guilty, guilty, guilty at him the whole time in the beginning, and then at the end, after the Rhyme and Reason come back, he's like innocent until proven guilty. Like he becomes like a reasonable person.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, it's sweeping police reform when Rhyme and Reason show up. Wild. All right, a couple more questions. After Milo gets back in the movie, Phantom Tollbooth just yeets itself out a window. And Milo's like, okay. And I wanted to know if that's what happened in the book, because it was very funny to me in the movie, how it's just like, woo! I'm out of here. Especially because it's like that 70s, like...
Yeah.
It doesn't look quite natural. Like, they haven't got the momentum of how objects move down just right. So it's just like, I mean, it is magic, so it doesn't matter. But it's just, yeet was the only word that made any sense for describing the action of the toll booth leaving his window. And I want to know that would happen in the book.
I desperately wish that it had yeeted itself out the window in the book, because that would have been amazing. But it does not. It's still there when he gets back, and then when he gets home from school the next day, the toll booth has vanished as mysteriously as it arrived.
Okay, that makes sense. Speaking of, is there any well, we don't. You said that he doesn't call that Stewart or whoever that kid in the beginning is, or Ralph, or
I think his name was Ralph. Yeah.
Because in the end of the movie, it's like, oh, he's on the phone with Ralph again. Yeah. Who's still just as like fed up with Milo as ever. But he's like, something weird just showed up in my living room. And it's the box, like the Phantom Tollbooth has now passed on, and it's like, ooh, it's, one of that kind of ending. So there's no reference to anything like that happening in the...
There's a note left for Milo that says like, there are so many other boys and girls who need the toll booth, so we had to pass it on.
Oh, okay.
Kind of a
So
thing.
there is that idea then.
Yeah.
And then my last question was, does Milo then get over his midlife crisis and start enjoying life? Because the end of the movie, like, as the music plays, is him like skipping through the fields and like
steals a kite from
stealing kites from kids, just being a real jerk, and then riding a seesaw, a teeter-totter, just really lapping up that 8-year-old life, and wondering if that's how the book ends.
Yeah, it is. First, he's disappointed that he can't go back through the toll booth to visit his friends, but then he realizes that there's so much to do and see right here. So he'll be okay.
Cool.
Kites to steal and things.
Kites to steal.
I died.
Yeah. He just runs up to that kid and just
takes
his kite. Come on, Milo. You little shit. All right, I've got one question for Lost in Adaptation.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Is it lost?
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
I kind of had another one we talked about during the previous segment, but this one I wrote down while we were watching the movie because I felt like I had missed something in this scene. It's right when they first get to Dictionopolis, and he meets the spelling bee, and then the spelling bee is this little bee who just spells words and is kind of weird and annoying. But then he immediately runs into the humbug, who's his other like partner in crime for the rest of the adventure. And they start sword fighting because they seem to hate each other, the humbug and the spelling bee. And I couldn't figure out what that conflict between them was or what was supposed to be going on there. And I was like, felt like maybe there was just so much going on musically and like,
yeah, there was a lot
of talking and noise.
Scene.
And I was like, maybe I just missed what the conflict is here, or like what's happening, or maybe I didn't. Maybe it's expanded on in the book. Is there what's up with them?
So Milo meets the spelling bee at the market, and then the humbug shortly after, like in the movie. And they do fight. It's never clear, like, exactly what their beef is. I think more than anything, the humbug just starts out as this kind of character who's kind of, like, annoying and full of himself. So he goads the spelling bee because he can. Because the spelling bee is, like, that type of person who's easy to, like, annoy and get going.
Yes. Okay. I guess that makes sense. Do they sword fight? Does the bee sword fight with his stinger nose?
No, they don't sword fight.
That was weird. I was like, bees don't have stinger noses. That's not how bees work.
They got stinger butts.
Yeah. I guess they didn't want to do that. Because, he sword fights with his nose. I was like, that's not how bees work. Okay. Anyways, that was all I had for Lost in Adaptation. Let's go ahead and find out what Katie thought was better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
So the movie starts out with a very groovy musical number. I'm not sure it was a good substitute for Milo's inner monologue about feeling dissatisfied. The phone call we talked about, the phone call was just, they tried.
Yeah.
But it was just too unintentionally funny.
Yeah.
For me to get anything out of it.
I couldn't get over Ralph and his just...
Milo, can we talk about anything else?
His dripping disdain for Milo.
I really could have done without the movie's extended, oh my god, I'm animated scene.
Yes.
That went on forever.
It went on so long. That's one of those things where it's like, okay, you do the gag like once or twice and then you move on.
like and the gag, like this movie was 1970, right? So like that wasn't even like we had already been doing the live action
it's not
animated. Like it's not new anymore.
I mean, Mary Poppins. It's a different kind of thing, but similar.
Like we did that all through the 60s, right?
Yeah, it's happened before. Like it's not a completely new thing. And I thought, he spends. If you haven't seen the movie, he spends after he goes through the toll booth. When he comes out the other side, he's animated, and he spends like 3 minutes. It's probably like 30 seconds, but it feels. I bet it's at least a minute.
I bet it is at least a minute.
Of like driving back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's all from this one wide shot so that we can see it. They're doing like a split screen thing, and he's going back and forth, and he's human, and then he's cartoon, and then he's human, he's cartoon, and then he walks into it, and he's like sticking arms and legs out either side. And it's like, okay.
And you
get to do it once.
Every time he sticks an arm or a leg through the toll booth, it's pointing the wrong way. For like the way that the other half of him is pointing, and I was like, "Can we just?"
It's a fine little gag, but they had 15 seconds and then it wore out its welcome. Again, I guess it's one of those things that I guess maybe kids wouldn't feel that way, but it's like, okay, can we move on?
I did not like that the movie had Tak open his stomach to reveal the clock.
I thought that was fine.
I thought it was unnecessarily weird.
I kind of liked it because he stores stuff in there. To me, he felt like he's like a stuffed animal.
I guess
that's how he came across to me. Is like he is a stuffed animal whose heart is like a clock, basically.
I was so taken aback by that first scene where he like just opens his gut to reveal a clock. I couldn't get on board with it.
All right, fair enough.
Eventually, in both the book and the movie, we meet Dr. Cacophonous Discord, who is the sound scientist. And I preferred the book introduction to him because in the book, he's not like literally smashing things to make noise. He like opens bottles and stuff and like sounds come out and he makes like unique sounds by opening the bottles.
He does both. I mean, he does open bottles and sounds comes out in the movie, but he's also throwing things and breaking things, and which is just kind of amping that up a little bit more. But yeah, because I mean, he does have bottles that have sound in them.
After the spelling bee and the humbug cause chaos at the marketplace, because their fight that we talked about earlier, they'd like knock over a bunch of stalls and stuff, and they cause all this big mess. But when that happens in the book, for a few minutes afterwards, everyone's sentences are jumbled up. And they're all like talking nonsense because they've like flung the words and the letters everywhere.
That's interesting.
So then Milo and Tak get thrown in the dungeon for 6 million years after the incident in the marketplace. Yeah. Not really, but
right.
Where we meet the witch, whose name is Faintly Macabre. I want to get some snaps for that name.
Did they say that in the movie?
Yes. I thought they didn't at first, but then when they leave, they refer to her as Faintly Macabre. So I guess she must have said what her name was at some point.
I may have missed it, that that's what they were calling. I may have thought that was just like somebody saying those words in reference to something, as opposed to it being her name.
Interesting.
I'd have to remember. I don't recall her. Like I said, that didn't register with me that was her name until you said that.
But I do love the idea of a witch named Faintly Macabre. But what we are missing in the movie is her backstory. She does tell Milo and Tak in the movie a little bit about like what happened to the princesses and like between the two kings, which she also does in the book. But in the book, we get her backstory, which is about how she was actually power hungry when she worked for the Kingdom of Wisdom. Like there's this whole thing about how she loved brevity so much and she wanted everyone to be concise in how they used words. So she kept passing more and more laws that restricted word usage until like nobody could talk. And that's how she ended up getting thrown in the dungeon.
That's just like 1984.
Isn't everything just like 1984? Oh, God, kill me.
I could be wrong. I've never read it, but that's actually more like 1984 than what most people say, right?
Yeah.
Like
yeah, that is more like 1984
like
than...
I don't know. Again, I haven't read it, but yeah. Anyways, sorry. I was mostly joking.
So after they leave the dungeon, they go to the King's Banquet, where in both the book and the movie, everyone eats their words by standing up and saying like what they want, and then that's what gets delivered to them. But before that, in the book, Milo suggests that they have a light meal, and the waitstaff brings out light, and then he suggests a square meal, and they bring out squares. It's a pun a minute over here. They also have a course of half-baked ideas at the banquet, and one of the half-baked ideas is the earth is flat. I just wanted to throw that in there. And Tak warns Milo not to eat too many of the half-baked ideas because they'll make him sick.
Nice.
So when they meet the mathematician in the book, they ask for the biggest number. So he shows them a giant 3, and then they ask for the longest number. So he shows them a very long 8. And that kind of goes on until they arrive at what they actually mean, which is the number of the greatest magnitude, which is when they start discussing infinity like they do in the book. So it's like an interesting exercise in like what you mean versus like what you're actually saying.
Yeah. It is funny though when you say the longest number, so he shows them a very long 8. A very long 8
is an infinity.
Symbol, kind of.
kind of.
Not really, but
but it would look a bit like
a
one.
little bit like it.
The movie, I think, I didn't catch it if the movie snuck it in there, but I'm pretty sure they left out my most and least favorite pun in this book, which is when they're in the number mines, and Milo accidentally drops a number and it breaks, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and the math magician's like, "That's fine. We use the broken ones for fractions."
Yeah, I don't think that's
I don't
in the
think
movie.
they snuck that in.
I don't think they did.
Also, while they're in Digitopolis in the book, they eat subtraction stew that makes you hungrier the more you eat.
It's terrible.
I know, nightmare.
invention.
So the book reorders some stuff. Or no, the movie, reorders some stuff from the book. So I'm kind of like jumping around-ish. But when they meet Chroma the Great, Milo does try to conduct a sunrise in the book, but he accidentally conducts through an entire week in 7 minutes because he doesn't know how to, like, stop them. And so they just keep playing, like, faster and faster. But since everyone is asleep, nobody knows what happened. So it's just, like, a week that's gone and nobody knows about it.
All right, that works.
Chroma also briefly demonstrates what happens if the orchestra stops playing and all the color vanishes.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised that the movie didn't do that. I thought that would have been like an easy kind of animation flex.
Yeah, it would have been a cool looking visual to
Yeah.
have them stop and all the color disappears, and then like that would have been neat. Yeah. I will say that it could have been hard to, not hard, it could have been easy to do the like going through a week in one in 7 minutes or whatever. But I do like the movie's version of just like everything gets all out of whack and like it's just like all the colors are going crazy, and because that in a visual medium
That makes
it's
sense.
easy
yeah.
and helps. If he just goes through a week in a minute, then you're done with that, or in 7 minutes, then you're just done. Like then it's just back to normal. You know what I mean? Whereas what we get in the movie, it's like weird. The sky keeps changing colors, and which is interesting.
The movie also cut out the Island of Conclusions, which you can only get to by jumping.
It's a jump to conclusions.
It's a jump
Matt.
to conclusions. And in order to get back from the Island of Conclusions, you can't jump back. You have to do the hard work of swimming through the sea of knowledge.
I bet Norman Juster is insufferable at a dinner party. Just insufferable.
Actually, did you see the comment we got?
No.
I don't remember if we got it on Facebook or Instagram. My Aunt Julie is a children's librarian, and she has actually served on the Caldecott Committee before. That's the award for the best illustrated children's book. And she's met him.
Oh.
She said he was delightful.
Well, I'm not. When I said insufferable, what I mean is exhausting.
Yeah, probably.
And I said specifically at a dinner party. Not that he's exhausting, and like I'm sure he could be a very delightful person. I know nothing. I'm not trying to cast aspersions or anything. And just sort of the nature of the writing.
Yeah.
And like the wordplay and the like a little bit too clever for his own good at times sort of feel vibe you get coming off the whole thing just makes me like it's one of those people. It's just like, all right, I'm gonna have another glass of wine while Norman's talking. All right, while Norman's holding court, or Norton, sorry. Anyways.
So at the end of the book, after they have gotten the princesses out of the castle, the demons are chasing them because the princesses don't fly like they do in the movie.
Okay.
So they help them out of the castle, and they basically have to get back through the land of ignorance. So the demons are chasing them, and then everyone that they've made friends with along the way shows up to help. Like, we get like a Riders of Rohan coming over the hill scene,
Nice.
Which I thought was fun. Also, that's when we see Officer Shrift again at the end, and in that scene, he's riding a dachshund.
Well, that's disappointing that we didn't see that.
I know. And my last note here is kind of a thematic thing. I don't think I like that Rhyme and Reason just magically make everything perfect at the end of the movie. I feel like what the book impresses is more of a message of like, there's still work to do, things are improved, but they're not magically all better. And there's this other message that like, there's still goodness and strength in some of the more like quote unquote unpleasant stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the best example of that is Dr. Discord. So in the movie, we see him magically become Dr. Harmony.
I missed that.
At the end,
Yeah.
they like fly past his cart and now it says Dr. Harmony instead of Dr. Discord.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But there's also another story that got cut from the movie, which is about the Sound Keeper, who is a character that collects sounds, and she gets so upset by unpleasant sounds that she ends up hoarding all sound in her castle. So the land surrounding it is now completely devoid of sound, and the people are like engaged in an active rebellion to try and liberate sound from this despot. So she has to learn that like all sounds have their place and it's not okay for her to just hoard all of them, even if she doesn't like personally like how people use them. Which I think is maybe a more positive message.
Yeah, I think so.
Than like discord is now magically harmony.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's okay for there to be discord.
Yeah.
Like it's okay for things to be a little bit messy and maybe for to be a little bit unpleasant.
Interesting. All right. Cool. Well, that's it for Better in the Book. Let's go ahead and find out what you thought was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
I thought it made sense for Milo's little car to come with the toll booth. In the book, the car is like a toy that he has. Mm-hmm. But I felt like he seemed a little old to have a car that you could like ride in.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's usually something for like little kids, you know?
We've discussed this before with the with the big wheel thing. I don't think it's that outlandish for I mean, the car thing, yes, maybe a little bit more, but it's than like a big wheel. But
when I was little, at my grandma's house, there was like a little like antique metal car, but I don't think I could fit in it past like 4, is what I'm saying. Maybe
some depends on what you're talking about, I guess. Yeah, there are some that are specifically made for like little like toddlers, but there are also those cars that are made for kids up to like 8 or 9 years old.
I guess. I mean, I don't think it's like a Barbie Jeep, but...
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
At any rate, I think it makes sense that the car came with the toll booth.
I agree. I think it's fun that it kind of drives out. And because it also is like, it's in his living room, so it would be weird if he had that, like, because that's the kind of thing you have outside. Like that kind of car,
yeah.
you would have that outside anyway, so why would it be in his living room? So yeah.
I thought when he got to the doldrums in the movie, having it be like literally consuming him and like sucking him in was interesting. Because that wasn't really the vibe that I got from the book. Not that it was like literally enveloping him.
Yeah.
I also liked the movie's visual style while they were on their way to Dictionopolis, where like everything was literally made of words. Like they go over a bridge and it was like made of a giant word. I thought it got a little bit more boring once we were inside the city and it was basically just like words written on stuff.
Yeah, they kind of mix and matched.
Yeah.
Of like sometimes it was just like buildings with a bunch of words on it, and then sometimes it was the buildings were like it kind of mixed and matched, which yeah.
But I thought there was some visually interesting stuff there. When they are at the dinner, when Milo is talking to the king about bringing back rhyme and reason, I thought it was a good change to have the spelling be like poke the humbug to make him like quote unquote volunteer for the mission. Because what happens in the book is that the king is just like, and the humbug will go with you. And the humbug's like, wait, what? But I thought that was a good change. And it kind of like closes out their little
antagonistic relationship.
Yeah. The movie also cut a scene where Milo and company meet a boy who floats in the air and gets closer to the ground the older he gets. It was kind of a weird scene in the book. The quote I'm going to read is, in my family, everyone is born in the air with his head at exactly the height it's going to be when he's an adult, and then we all grow toward the ground. Interesting, but it didn't end up being, like, super relevant to the overall story, so... I mean, I guess you could argue that a lot of it is not, like, relevant to the plot, because this book is, like, theme-driven.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good cut.
Yeah. If you're gonna cut something,
yeah.
I mean, there are ones that make a lot more, that play much more directly into the stories. A lot of the stories we get in the movie, the little sort of vignettes we get in the movie, play a lot more directly into like the main themes of Milo's character.
Yeah. Which
I'm sure that you could get that with this, but it's not immediately apparent to me what like sort of the message is with this vignette.
It was like a discussion of like perspective. So because like the idea was that because this boy's like head is always in the same place, he always has like the same perspective, like literally thinking about like the way you see things or like the direction that you see them from.
Interesting. Okay.
But Milo grows up, so he sees things from a different perspective the older he gets.
Yeah.
Which I think would have been hard to translate into film.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay.
I thought having them get into the mine by knowing random math trivia was interesting. I mean, it really did seem like it was just random math trivia.
Yeah.
But
it was.
But it's an interesting idea.
You know a thing about math. Congratulations.
You know E equals MC squared. Good job. And I think the main thing that the movie improves on, unfortunately, probably not purposefully, but I think the main thing the movie improves is eliminating the colonialism vibes from the book. So there's backstory in the book about how the Kingdom of Wisdom was settled by a prince who came across the Sea of Knowledge, and apparently the Kingdom of Wisdom previously was full of demons, which, woof. And then at the end, King Azaz and the math magician pledged to clean up the land of ignorance and drive out the remaining demons. And, you know, colonialism, this is a pretty common thing to find in Western fantasy.
Yeah.
Nowhere in children's fantasy is it more obvious than the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
But it definitely does make an appearance in this book. It's one of those things that is so ubiquitous in Western fantasy. I doubt Norman Juster even realized he was doing it.
Yeah.
You know, probably not. And, you know, now we think a little bit more about it, and we're like, oh, hey, that kind of feels like colonialism.
Yeah. That don't feel great.
But, yeah, so that's a thing.
Cool. All right. Yeah, they do drop that storyline in the movie.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and find out what the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
I thought the movie more or less nailed Milo walking home and not noticing anything around him. Even if the song was terrible.
Yeah, song's terrible. It's the worst kind of 70s like pop.
Yeah.
Burt Bacharach it's so
I'm glad we gave up on that style of music.
So not good.
Just leave it in the 70s.
And I thought the opening was interesting. It's just like I didn't realize it's him not noticing things, which makes sense, but I thought it was like a weird because he's like almost getting hit by like fire trucks and stuff, and I was like, is this like a weird? Is he like setting up him as some like strangely lucky? Like I thought it was gonna have to do something with like luck or like because it's like everything is like just barely missing him and stuff, and I mean he's also just like staring at the ground, so I see that that's what they were going for more like he was just not paying attention to anything. But yeah, that opening it really goes on for quite a while and is not my favorite opening theme music in a film. I'll say that.
When he gets the toll booth, the line on the instructions if not perfectly satisfied, your wasted time will be refunded. Some of the stuff in this book gave me some Douglas Adams vibes.
Yeah. I think
For
mentioned
sure.
did we bring that up at some point?
No, I
in
don't
the
think
prequel?
so.
I don't know. I
don't
felt
think
like
so.
we mentioned it, maybe.
There were some changes to the doldrums, but it was like mostly what was in the book. And the idea that he has to think
Yeah.
in order to get out of the doldrums is definitely something from the book. The Awful Din, I thought the movie absolutely nailed.
I thought the Awful Din was really cool looking. I thought the animation style for that in the movie, it almost looks like finger painting or something, and the way it moves around, I thought was super cool. I was like, yeah, there's lots of really cool animation stuff, and we'll mention a couple more here in a minute. But I in particular, I thought that was one of the ones in the beginning that I thought was really like different and neat, like because it was unique.
Officer Shrift was pretty on point. He doesn't have like robot legs in the book. But specifically the scene where like he sentences Milo and Milo's like, but only a judge can do that. And then he's like, well, I'm also the judge and I'm also the jailer.
Yeah. I'm judge, jury, and executioner. I am the law.
I mean, basically.
Yeah.
I thought the movie nailed the mathemagician and his pencil staff that he uses to do math things. And the scene where Milo like does a gatekeeper riddle on the mathemagician, where he's like, well, if you agree that you'll always disagree, then that means you agree on something.
Got him.
Got him. And then one of the other demons that they encounter in the Land of Ignorance, the demon of insincerity, which was like the tiny little monster that pretends to be giant and terrifying.
Yeah, that one's funny. And you had one here that you didn't mention. We talked about the words becoming their dinner, but the specific line that it was in the movie.
I didn't know I was going to have to eat my words.
That made me chuckle.
Yeah.
That line made me laugh. And that's another one that, kind of reminds me. It's that, is he American or British?
I believe he's American.
Because it feels, again, it's one of those, it's a very Douglas Adams feeling line. It's that sort of British dry wit. All right, we've got a few odds and ends before we get to the final verdict. So we mentioned the animation, but I did think that Rhyme and Reason at the end looked super cool in the movie. Very strange. They don't look like anything else. They're like sort of formless.
Yeah, they look like
light
like
beings.
celestial beings.
I haven't seen Steven Universe, but is that what the gems look like, kind of, or no? I've seen it. I've
seen like episodes here and there. I haven't watched a lot of it.
But I got vibes of like
definitely like
that
vibes of that kind of thing. Yeah,
is what I was getting. And again, I've never seen it, so I don't actually know. But
in Steven Universe, yeah,
is what it reminded me of, without knowing if it reminded me of that or not.
This movie slapped me in the face with the 70s.
Yeah, it's a very 70s.
Or I guess the 60s, really, since that's when they were, like, making it.
Yeah,
but
late 60s.
Just, like,
60s,
smack
70s.
me in the face with it.
The music in particular.
Yeah.
But it just kind of everything stylistically. It couldn't look more like the late 60s, early 70s. I'm not sure if it could. So one of the things I thought was interesting, and I want to talk about it and see if you got these vibes from the book, and I think this is very much a modern sort of reading of it, and I don't think it was the intention, but I kind of got these vibes as we were watching the movie. It felt like this. So the main conflict we get is between the numbers people and the words people. And the words people think that numbers are stupid and don't matter, or, and vice versa, or at least the kings. The answer is we just need Rhyme and Reason to show up and explain, no, the answer is that both of you, it's a little bit of A, a little bit of B. It felt like the movie was going for this sort of enlightened centrism take of like, but again, I think that's only feels kind of problematic in a current, maybe not only in a current political climate, and from like in the year 2021, like it feels a little bit less sort of it's not a particularly unique idea in the sense of like, okay, yeah, they're the Kingdom A hates Kingdom B because they're different in this way, and Kingdom B hates Kingdom A because they're different in this way, and actually they're not that different. They should just work together. Like, sure, fine. But it does feel a little bit like, and to be fair, in the movie, neither of them are presented as like evil or anything, or like they're not. Neither of them are doing anything that's like evil or like bad. They're just like have a disagreement, and so I think the message works. And again, I'm applying a lot of like current day baggage to this narrative. But when anytime I see sort of in narratives these days of like two political parties, shall we say, which essentially they are,
right? And
then the message of the movie is the answer's somewhere in the middle. I have very little patience for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also I think that was sort of exacerbated by like the answer to this being rhyme and reason, which again I think is very true and applicable in the sense that you want your world to be sort of ruled by reasonable discourse and like understanding and reason, you know, logic. Like that's a very much should be a basis of how you construct your worldview and figure out, you know, what worldview, moral stance, political stance, or whatever makes the most sense. Absolutely. But there's something about like the deity of reason as like this weird, and again, I think this is all
I think that yes, that particular message, which is something from the book, leaves a bad taste in our mouths here in 2021 because we are approaching it now with, for us, 30 years of baggage of the ideas of reason and common sense being co-opted by people who use them disingenuously.
And that's what it is. And it's because rhyme and reason to me feels like common sense as opposed, because I'm 100% on board with reason ruling the day. That's absolutely, you know what I mean? Like it's one of the biggest issues of the last, you know, four plus longer years is a lack of critical thinking and reason in the discourse and that sort of thing, and on particularly on one side. But there is that the canard or whatever of quote unquote common sense, which is, to me, I was getting that quote unquote common sense vibes from rhyme and reason, and then also the answer being like, oh, they're both silly and dumb, you know, they're not silly but like. It was just that like I kept getting like peak enlightened centrism vibes from it, and I knew that wasn't the point,
right?
And especially not at the time when written, but it still bothered me.
Now, to speak on the idea of like words and numbers being of equal importance, one of the messages at the end of the book.
Also, they're not. Words are more important. I'm kidding.
They're important in different ways.
They are.
One of the messages at the end of the book, which I don't think I caught in the movie, and maybe you'll remember if I didn't, but one of the messages at the end is that, like, it's not so much what you're learning, but how you learn to use what you're learning. So for me, and again, I'm applying a 2021 perspective as a former educator.
We're only 5 days post-coup here, so let's put that up to put this all in perspective.
Of this idea that if you tout the humanities over STEM, or STEM over the humanities, you end up with a mess.
Yeah.
You need balance.
Right. Yes, I agree. And I think that's totally a valid viewpoint. And I think if that is the message that you got from the book,
Yeah.
I don't know how much that came across in the movie necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know that it did.
Because it does feel a little more like they're pushing, which is again where I get the bad vibes from. I get those weird, like, again, enlightened centrist, like peak reason, big brain vibes from, is that it felt more like just like STEM will save you.
Mm-hmm.
Like STEM will save the world. Like doing math at a wall will unlock rhyme and reason and save the world. And I know that, and again, that wasn't the only, I'm trying, that's a little reductive. It's a lot reductive. And I'm not saying that's what the movie was saying at all. It's just, there was elements of the, like, I couldn't shake that feeling I got from certain elements of it, of just like, I don't know. I think it does work overall, and I don't think. And again, we said it several times, but I don't think that's not what the story was going for. And again, we're coming at it from the current year we're in, as opposed to from 1970, where I feel like it's a little bit different. And so yeah, it's just interesting, and I would be interested to see if anybody else got similar vibes. I think part of that, I'm bringing a lot of extra baggage from it, of coming from sort of being a part of the sort of skeptical online like atheist sphere, and like what that devolved into in certain sects of it, like certain parts of it definitely devolved into these weird, like, reason bro, like toxic, horrible, like, you know, the Gamergate side of the internet.
Well, it can circle back in on itself, and it just like doubles back, where you can be so focused on reason, and we should be devoid of all emotion and just reason, that it like turns inward on itself and it's just emotion again.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I just want to mention, I posted a tweet about this on our Twitter after we watched the movie last night, but Faintly Macabre is voiced by June Foray, who also did the voice work for the fairy godmother in Cinderella. And I recognized her voice during her scene. I was like, who is that? So I went and looked it up. And it's the fairy godmother from Disney's Cinderella in 1950. And their character designs are like almost exactly the same.
I thought it was very funny in the sense, I was like, I haven't even seen Cinderella since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
It's not one of those Disney movies I rewatch very often. And I was like, that's the fairy godmother from Cinderella. And I didn't even realize it was the voice until you posted that. I was like, good Lord. And I'm sure that was a little bit of just sort of like tongue-in-cheek, like fun that the animators would be my guess, is that they're like, you know, haha, it's her. It's the fairy godmother.
Fairy godmother.
It's the fairy godmother.
I mean, it's definitely her, probably her most iconic role.
Yeah. I will say one of the explicit messages in the movie that I really enjoyed is that there's a whole line, and I can't remember who says it. Might be Rhyme and Reason?
Yeah, it's one of them.
They basically say, don't worry about making mistakes. We learn more from getting things wrong. And you know, sometimes we learn more from getting... Is the line in the book?
It is in the book.
Okay, if you can read it. Cool.
I can find it.
Because I really enjoyed that, and it's something I talk about a lot when... I don't know if I talk about it a lot, but it is a thing I believe a lot, is that, you know, failing and more specifically, I think teaching children that it's okay to fail, and not only okay, but good to fail, as long as you do it the right way and learn from it. And teaching, because it's one of those things where you can, if you don't instill like a healthy sort of like appreciation for failing, it can paralyze children in the sense of like, as soon as if they don't immediately succeed at something, they will abandon it or give up on it. And I think it is important to sort of spread that message and teach that message at a young age, that failure is okay as long as you do it, you know, don't let it sort of define you, kind of thing. Which there's a certain way to say it that feels less patronizing and less cliche. And I think this the book does a pretty good job of it. Go ahead and read.
You must never feel badly about making mistakes, explained Reason quietly, as long as you take the trouble to learn from them. For you often learn more by being wrong for the right reasons than you do by being right for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I think that's...
And Milo says, because it leads into what I was talking about earlier.
Go ahead.
But there's so much to learn, he said with a thoughtful frown. Yes, that's true, admitted Rhyme, but it's not just learning things that's important. It's learning what to do with what you learn and learning why you learn things at all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's I liked that whole little the whole little spiel. I thought it was nice. I have to talk about your note that says that the dodecahedron looks like a D20.
Because it does.
Because it is. That's what a D20 is. It is a dodecahedron.
But okay.
That's what a D20 is.
But I thought... No, a D20 is a 20-sided die. Isn't a dodecahedron 12 faces?
Oh, is it 12? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought it was. No, you're right.
Get on my level.
Sorry. Yes. No, it is a 12-sided die. Sorry. I mistook what
But it
you
also looks a little different in the illustration. It looks more like a dude with like multiple faces.
Like a dude? Oh, they have like a person has like a body?
Yeah.
As opposed to just being like the actual shape.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Sorry. What is a 21 then? I
don't know. It's a D20. That's what it is. That's all I know.
No, but it has a... Yeah, but a D12 is a dodecahedron.
Venta something, probably.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, ventahedron.
Something like that. 20-sided polygon. It's an icosagon.
Oh, man. Not even close.
No.
Icosagon. That's a pretty sweet name, though.
How am I pronouncing that? Can I get a pronunciation, if you please? Icosagon.
Wow. All right.
So now we know. Or it's a D20.
Or it's a D20. Yeah, you can just call it D20, I guess. Anyways, that's it. Let's go ahead and get to the final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
I really enjoyed this book. I'm kind of sad that I missed it as a kid because I think I would have really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really say the same about the movie. Like we said at the beginning of the episode, it was fine.
Yeah.
It slapped me in the face with the 70s, but it was fine.
Yeah.
But I could also see how you could like the movie if it was something that you grew up with and watched as a kid.
Yeah, for sure.
And while I did like the book a lot, I can also totally see how someone could read it and find it boring. The main thing that the book has going for it is the wordplay aspect. So if you aren't into that,
yeah,
you know.
Right.
But I do like wordplay. And I think the book has more and better wordplay in general. It's a pun a minute. I would seriously love to like analyze this book and figure out what the pun density per 100 words is. I could just picture like Norton Juster, like I feel like he had to have had like a book of idioms and was just like sitting at his desk flipping through it like, what can I do today? What can I do today? The movie tries, but to me, it doesn't seem as interested in either really living up to what the book does or trying to really build on it and improve it. I also felt like the book had a better overall message. The movie just cleans things up really tidily at the end and everything becomes perfect pretty quickly. But I preferred the message about still needing to grow and improve things. So for those reasons, I'm going to give this one to the book.
There you have it. In the battle of the Phantom Tollbooth versus the Phantom Tollbooth, the Phantom Tollbooth wins. As always, you can do us a giant favor. Head over to patreon.com/thisfilmisit. Like I mentioned in the beginning, support us for $2, $5, or $15 a month and get access to different things. We mentioned this on a Facebook and Twitter post and that sort of thing, but we're doing a new thing in 2021 where at whatever level you support us at on Patreon, we'll be posting what episodes will be coming out a month ahead of time. So the whole next month's worth of episodes. So 2, but but you'll know for much further ahead of time if you're interested in trying to read along, especially for reading along, because that takes a little bit longer than watching the movie. So that's a perk you get on Patreon, and we're having scheduled bonus episodes for the $5 level, $5 and up level. We'll have at least one bonus episode every month. We're going to schedule those out so we don't miss them like we have been or had kind of previously. Been a little bit more flexible on when we did those episodes. We want to make that a more consistent thing. So we're going to do scheduled at least once a month, and then there will be extra episodes here and there where we have other things to talk about, movies, TV shows, that sort of thing. And then that was it. I think, right? That was the thing.
Yeah, that was the whole post.
That was the whole post. All right. But you can also do us a giant favor. If you don't support us on Patreon, which is fine, you can head on over to iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you listen to our show. Give us a 5-star rating and a review. We appreciate that very much. Also, if you want to, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, all of our social media. The main reason you want to do that, we post lots of cool stuff, pictures, behind the scenes stuff a little bit. But most importantly, we want to get your feedback on the stuff we talk about. We'll be posting posts about the Phantom Tollbooth Friday, I guess. Normally.
Friday, yeah. I usually do follow-up polls on Friday. So I post a poll on each one of our social media platforms asking you guys to weigh in on whether you prefer the book or the movie. If you haven't, both read and watched, that's fine. You can still weigh in if you just want to talk about like how much you loved the book as a kid, or
even if you don't vote, which the voting is fine and interesting, but we're more interested in if you comment and leave feedback about what you liked or didn't, or any feelings you had on it is what we're more interested in, because then we read those and talk about that stuff on our prequel episodes. Katie, speaking of prequel episodes, what's next?
Up next, we are doing something that I'm really excited about. We are going to be talking about The Little Mermaid.
Oh, yes.
So that is a short story, fairy tale by one Hans Christian Andersen, and the 1989 Disney film.
Back-to-back animated films?
Yeah, I guess so.
Polar Express, technically, and then Phantom Tollbooth, and...
But we have something big coming up at the beginning of February, and I needed a shorter item in here.
That's fair. That's fair. That is fair. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. In 1 week's time, we'll be talking prequel, learning a little bit about The Little Mermaid and some other stuff. And in 2 weeks' time, we're coming back and talking about Disney's The Little Mermaid. So get excited, because we're going to go take a little adventure under the sea. I'm going to cut all that out. Anyways, until next time, guys, gals, non-binary, everybody else.
Keep reading books.
Keep watching movies.
And keep being awesome.